You can talk a little bit about what you're seeing with just the timing of court cases and how quickly people can expect family law matters to get solved versus how it was before COVID, during COVID, and how it is now.
Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, I haven't seen a decrease in the backlog that COVID created. So pretty much among all the cases, all the different counties, we saw a backlog because of COVID, because there was periods where courts were completely closed or only open for emergency matters, and that most civil trials got continued out, considered indefinite period of time until the court started resuming its normal course of business. Some counties sooner than others, but mostly everything was back up to speed in the fall of 2020. So from March of 2020 to fall of 2020, all counties experienced a litigation backlog. However, filings increased during COVID. So we had this parallel where we had a backlog in current cases with an increase in filings. That backlog is still trying to make its way through the system. We have seen some counties make some progress in, trying to address some of the litigation slowdowns by increasing trial availability in departments and increasing settlement conference and informal settlement arrangements in order to try to clear out that system. But other counties are still very backlogged on trial assignments because criminal cases that also got backlogged in COVID had to take time-wise priority to get cleared through their system. So we're still seeing that it is a delay in getting into court, probably an extended, if you're just dealing with interim type matters, of extended delay of 30 to 45 days. But if you're talking about trying to get a trial on all issues, that extension is gone out to 6 months at least. So people need to kind of be patient with the court system in their expectation of getting their divorce handled in a fast or timely manner. Of course, the easiest way and the fastest way to get divorced is to settle, right? So then you want to kind of talk about how you can let down your barrier of I must get what I want versus I can make a compromise in order to be done with this process. And there are avenues to avoid the court system completely through mediation, private judges. That has increased a lot for people who can afford to use a private judge. It's allowed under a California Constitution to stipulate to a private judge to resolve our matter. A lot of retired judges have a side business of providing this work, and it can be costly, but it is, you get that person all to yourself, no sharing. When the day you set a hearing with a private judge, you have your hearing with a private judge. You don't deal with the uncertainty of continuances and court backlog. So there's ways, if parties are willing to be creative and maybe even spend a little bit more money to get their case handled more efficiently.
And you have a list of private judges that you have been in front of recently?
Yes, so there's private judges, and one thing that's been nice about private judges is they've maintained some of the access to the technology, such as Zoom. So it's easier to have judges out of San Francisco handling our cases. I have a judge out of Napa handling a case right now for me. And they're doing Zoom and easy to maintain it, while the Superior Court, Fresno County, is moving away towards Zoom. So that piece of technology is kind of something they're kind of deciding to stop using as frequently as we were using it before. So now you have to make a special request to appear via Zoom, which you think we'd want to move with the times, but there are some limitations to that as well. The court has experienced poor behavior through Zoom, and they don't like being on YouTube and that kind of thing. So we can control the forum, the time, and the pace of a case much faster with a private judge. So there's a lot of good private judges out of San Francisco, Los Angeles, and then also in our current area who are familiar with some of the unique experiences that residents of the Valley have to deal with when it comes to employment, cost of living, where it would be a benefit to stay local.
Yeah, and you're comfortable on the Zoom docket?
I am. I've adapted to it, and there are some things about it I really enjoy.
Yep.
Um, just because it provides you with access to materials and resources in your office that when you have to hike down to the courthouse, you kind of wonder, am I going to need that book? Am I going to need this? And you can't really be looking at things on your phone. So,
Right.
it is a great resource tool to, if some question comes up, to be able to ask Google. One example is the custody and visitation cases. We're deciding to pick the central, a meeting spot in the middle to do an exchange, right? And
Right. Oh
we've
yeah.
come up with this, no, this McDonald's is closer to them than my McDonald's. And it's easy to pull up a Google map on your second screen while you're having a conversation with a judge and say, I did the I've done the miles. This
Right.
is the center
This is fun.
location, right? So those are the kinds of ways that it can be a benefit. But I also have to acknowledge that the court, it's its own entity that has its own limitations, and that Zoom might
Sure.
be impacting them. So while it might be easier for me, it may not be easier for them. And
Yeah.
so
What
it's
about on
being
the
in
client
person.
side? Do you think that the Zoom is easier for the clients also?
It depends on the client. I think every person is more or less comfortable with technology. For clients who are very tech savvy, they appreciate it. They feel comfortable being more comfortable in their own home than
Yeah.
having the stress of getting in their car, driving somewhere, finding parking. Am I in the right spot? Am I, going through security? But there are people who are very afraid of
Right.
technology,
Sure.
and the unknown. I offer to have clients come Zoom with me. So
Oh,
they'll,
right.
so I can set up my desk in a way where my camera can have, a person who, there's a chair on the other side and they can be in the frame. And so a lot of times clients will come to those who are not comfortable with Zoom will come to my
Right.
office. And so they feel just more comfortable being in the room with me. And I think they don't mind Zoom in that way because we are able to have a thorough conversation,
Yeah.
muted, nobody can hear us. And it's less stressful than being in the environment that the courtroom presents. I mean, the courtroom is just stressful by design. They say they
Sure.
design courtrooms to be intimidating, right? The judge sits up high, they look down on you, the guy with a gun over there.
You got to go through the metal detector
You
and
go
all
through a
that.
metal
Yeah.
detector, there's a bunch of other people sitting in the room. And biology kicks in when people are stressed out, and
Sure.
their brain chemistry impacts how they are hearing information, how they're
Yep.
reading body language. And so, removing those types of triggers, I think, also helps people kind of calmly think through questions that are being asked of them, offers that are being presented to them. So I
Interesting.
like Zoom, but it's being taken away in Fresno County. I'm sad about it.
Yeah, but it sounds like you've got a good hybrid situation where you're able to bring somebody into your office and so they get the support from you, but still the expediency of the Zoom activity.
Right. And it's more comfortable to be in an office
Yeah,
versus a courtroom setting. Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. About what's kind of the ratio between like trial, mediation, private judge right now in what you're seeing?
So, I mean, the ratio for mediation is probably a little bit higher, that most self-represented people who are relatively calm with each other go through some kind of mediation, even if it's just, and I know this seems silly, but a family member, a friend.
Oh,
It's like you don't realize it, but people get involved in these divorces to try to work the deal out, right?
yeah,
So I think there's a pretty higher ratio of mediation cases or self-represented people who never get attorneys involved. Private judges' cases are very small portion because of
okay,
resources.
right,
You're paying for attorneys and then you also pay for the judge. And
right,
that might seem like, well, how much more could that be? But it can get up there. So what we call high end divorces, larger estates, they're going to go to private judges
gotcha.
at a pretty high rate. I would say at least half, if not more, are going to be in
Yeah,
private judges of that income category.
just because it's so much quicker right now.
Yes, especially with the court backlog
Yeah,
and the access to maintaining real remote access and technology that the traditional courthouse is losing.
Yeah. Well, good. And then for you, how much of your caseload is trial versus mediation inside your practice right now?
Yeah, so unfortunately, just because, well, fortunately, my cases, 90% of my cases are going through the litigation process. Only about 10% of them, I'm never stepping into court at all. That doesn't mean I'm doing a full trial on all issues on all my cases. Cases that have to do a full trial on all issues to resolve, that's a small percentage of my litigation cases. That would probably only be the 5 to 10% range. But there's going to be, in pretty much majority of my cases, at that 90% range, some court involvement, some contested hearing, some dispute. And whether it's a trial just on custody or it's a hearing on support, a temporary support hearing, there's going to be some court involvement just because of the fact that I am a litigator. That's what I gravitate my work and my experience on. And most people who are coming to me, they know the writing's on the wall. A lot of them they already tried mediation, it didn't work. They tried working it out and not having an attorney, it didn't work. So they're coming to me and it's already primed in that way. And it would take, a level of work for me to back it out of that I probably couldn't do. Like I'm just getting it through the system. Yeah.
So that's when people are coming to you typically is after they've already given their best chance to separate amicably.
Correct. Yeah. Right. And the conversations are already, you're never going to see this kid. The conversations are, I'm not paying you a dime. That toxicity has already happened. And sometimes people can wake up and come back from it. And sometimes they need a judge to yell at them to come back from it. Right. So that's kind of the unfortunate part is I'm pretty much retained in cases that are already on that litigation warpath. And it's about can we stop it with only a couple of hearings, or does it have to get to trial on all issues? Trial on all issues in family law is very rare and discouraged.
Right.
Even in our regular court system, our judges make us go through mandatory settlement conference and show proof that we've met and tried to resolve issues multiple times before they'll give us that trial date.
Gotcha. And then your client base right now, what's the ratio of the men and the women clients?
Gosh, I haven't even thought to look through my list and think about that. I have a case list. Maybe I have 60. How many cases do I have open right now? I have two lists I have to combine. So right now, active cases, I'm right around like 85. And like looking at is my work in progress list that my paralegals make for me.
Yeah.
And there'll be like 3 or 4 names on each page, and I can say it's pretty evenly split.
All right.
Maybe a little bit more female than men, but I would say that would be a slight.
All right. So not really a big differential. That's interesting.
No, not really. I definitely don't market that I'm better for men or women. There's some attorneys who kind of try to maximize on that in their marketing. Pro dad, I'll get you your time. We really try not to. So I don't think that we come across that way. And it can be strange because I would say that I feel the majority of women I have, it's like, I want a bulldog. Like, like I need someone who's gonna fight. And I don't, I don't know necessarily why, but maybe because they feel a little defenseless. They feel a little weaker in general in the situation. And so they feel like they need someone who's going to level that playing field, while maybe men don't feel that way. But, there has been a bigger shift where higher income earners can be the wife or the female in the relationship just as much as the male. And then I do have same-sex couples, so 2 men, 2 women. And so we don't necessarily see as much of the same historical gender roles and identities play out in our cases. Even though I would probably say Fresno still's a little bit more in that range. I mean, our cost of living is such that people can maybe be a one-income household.
Right.
There's not a lot of areas in California where you can be a one-income household.
No,
there
that's
really
true.
isn't. And I think in Fresno is probably one of the fewer areas where that is financially still viable for families. And then that usually does fall on the wife in a same-sex couple being the one who stayed home, and that kind of creates some of the more, I guess, historical gender roles when it comes to who's going to get custody or who's paying the support. But it doesn't really fall that way as consistently as it used to be.
Yeah, gotcha.